Good morning, lower school. Good job. Raise your hand if you ever thought to yourself, I think I might want to be a professional athlete when I grow up. Okay, you can put your hands down. Our guest today had the great fortune of doing so in multiple sports. Listen to that, in multiple sports. That means more than one. Thanks to the generosity of John and Betty Hencher and family, we have a special guest come as part of the Macmillan Character Education Speaker Series. The Henchers had two sons attend Kinkaid, and I think the Henchers are here. If you all would please stand, let's give them a round of applause for their support. This year's guest, Ms. Marion Jones, our fifth speaker in the Macmillan Character Education Series, attended the University of North Carolina and was a standout athlete in basketball and track and field. She was a superstar track and field athlete performing in the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney, Australia, and she won 5 gold medals. And she also performed in the 2004 Athens Games. In addition to competing in the Olympic Games, Ms. Jones also continued her basketball career, briefly playing in the WNBA. After a career in sports, she founded an organization, Take a Break, to help students in their quest to make good choices. This is fitting because we all here know that Kinkaid has 4 core values, and each of which is associated with the work that Ms. Jones does professionally. Raise your hand if you have siblings. And for those who aren't sure what that means brothers or sisters. Okay, you can put your hands down. Raise your hand if you have one sibling, only one, and don't count yourself. You can't be your own sibling. Okay, hands down. 2 siblings. 3 siblings. More than 3 siblings. Awesome. So Ms. Jones is not only an author, a speaker, and a tremendous athlete, she is also a mother of 3. Now here's my last question for you. Raise your hand if you think you can beat your mom in a foot race. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if you think you can beat your dad in a foot race. All right. So what I don't know is how fast Ms. Jones's children are, but I'm pretty sure that none of us, adults included, could beat Ms. Jones in a foot race. So please join me in giving Ms. Marion Jones, our Macmillan Character Education Speaker Series, a warm Kinkaid welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Who wants to try and beat me in a foot race? Maybe later, maybe later. Good morning. How's everybody? Stand up a second. Stand up a second. Shake your arms, shake your legs, shake your head, get the blood moving, jump up and down a little bit, don't hit anybody. All right, now sit down. Now sit down. I'm about to share something with you guys that could quite possibly change the rest of your life. Huh? That's pretty exciting. You want me to get started? Yeah, let's get started, all right. So all I want you guys to do, right, is just sit tight for the next 20 minutes or so. Can we do that? Yeah. I heard about this lower school Kinkaid group, and your teachers have been telling me that you guys are a pretty special bunch. So you got a lot to live up to these next 20 minutes, all right? All right, so I have a question for you guys. Now this question is only for the super, super duper smart kids out there, okay? So, my question is, what do your parents, your coaches, and your teachers always tell you to do when someone looks out for you or does something nice for you? All right, that's good, yeah. You always say thank you, right? So, well, a bunch of people are responsible for inviting me here today, right? And so they've done really, really nice and kind things. So what should I do? I should thank them, right? So I'm going to take just a moment to thank all the organizers, the Henser family for inviting me to speak in this series, because it's the right thing to do, right? So let's give all the organizers, the teachers, the faculty, and the family a big round of applause. Thank you, guys. Well, that's great. great. That's great. That's awesome. Well, they invited me here to share some of my life experiences with you guys because they think that you guys are a very special bunch. They think you're a very special group of kids. And they invited me to share some of my life experiences because I've had a very interesting life. All right? So I'm 38 years old now. I live in Austin, Texas. Any of you guys ever been to Austin? That's a super fun place, right? But I haven't always lived in Austin. I grew up in California. I have one older brother, all right? My parents divorced when I was 3 years old, and my mom raised my brother and I. And as a child, I participated in all kinds of sports. I participated in basketball. Anybody like basketball? Yeah, it's one of my favorite sports. I participated in soccer. Yeah. I did gymnastics. Any hands? My mom made me do ballet to get the picture in the tutu. Right now, the boys are like, eh. But actually, you guys are doing but there are a lot of famous NFL football players who do ballet to work on their balance. But anyways, so as a kid, I participated in a lot of different sports. And my mom and I realized when I was very young that I was really, really good at all of them. I would beat all of the boys, all of them. I beat my older brother in races. He's 5 years older than me, right? I was so good that at the age of 15, I made my first Olympic team, right? So I was competing against the fastest women in the world. But I was also going through a lot when I was young. My parents divorced when I was very young, and I was upset about that, and so I started to act up, and I started to do things that weren't very smart. Right? I used to get into some trouble when I was a little kid. But thankfully, I found getting and participating in sports as my outlet for all that negative energy. And I would go to practice and I would work hard and I became very, very good. Very good. So after I made the Olympic team at 15, I decided to travel all the way from California to North Carolina. Do you guys all know that that's on different parts of the country? So it's a long distance apart. And I decided that I was going to play basketball at the University of North Carolina. So their mascot at the University of North Carolina, they're the Tar Heels. Have you ever heard of them? Yeah, they're a pretty good group of basketball players there. And while I was there, I won a championship. I was on a team that won a championship. And I was doing really well. I was winning games. I was a captain on my team. But I was still struggling, right, with the disappointment of my parents divorcing, right? I was still upset inside. Although I was playing sports and I was doing well in school, I was still dealing with a lot of pain inside. Do sometimes you guys get upset about different things happening in your life, right? And sometimes you don't know how to express that, right? Well, that's how I was in college. I was dealing with a lot of pain, but instead of telling somebody, instead of going to a teacher or a parent or somebody, a mentor, I decided to keep it all bottled in, right? And I decided just to work harder in my sports and in my school and work harder. And that was great because I became very, very good at my sports. But that didn't help my problem within, right? Just because I'm doing good in sports, I'm still hurting inside, right? So that doesn't make me a very balanced person. So after I graduated from college, I graduated in 1997, long time ago, I decided that I wanted to run track. Does anybody like to run? Yeah. Well, I decided I was going to run track full time, right? And in 2000, I won 5 medals. 3 of them were gold medals, and 2 of them were bronze medals, right? So I was on top of the world, right? I was winning races. I was traveling all over the country. But once again, I was still kind of hurting inside, right? So because of that, along that time, I made some really poor choices in my life, right? I did some things that I shouldn't have, right? And so when I travel around the country now and I talk to a lot of young people, my message is that for them is to, before you make a choice in your life to do good or bad, you think about the consequences of your choices. Now, I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions because I've heard that you guys are a smart group of kids and I want to see it for myself, right? Does anybody know what consequences are? Right? Teachers, help me to pick somebody who can share what consequences are, if you don't mind. Right. That's great. She said they're punishment for wrong actions, right? But they're actually good and bad consequences, right? So when you do something good, right? When you help a friend, or you help your teacher, or you say a kind word, there are good consequences, right? Does anybody tell me some good consequences to doing the right thing? Young lady right here. Yes, stand up. Just speak super loud. Yep. That is a good consequence. Great. Now, maybe some of us know what this next question would be. Somebody tell me, what are some bad consequences? Right. Young man right here. Stand up. What are some bad consequences?
If you say a mean word to someone, you might get in trouble.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. Right? So there's also, it's important that you know the difference. Right? It's important that you know that you guys can control whether or not there are good consequences or bad consequences, right? You guys can control that before you even do or say anything. Right? Right? You guys control that. I know it's kind of tough at this age because you feel that everybody is telling you what to do, right? Yeah. You feel like your teachers are telling you what to do, your parents, your brothers and your sisters. But guess what? You guys can control something. You can control what you do, right? You can control if there are good consequences or bad consequences. Only you can control that. So you do have a little bit of control. It's important because you all have the power, even as young, sometimes as 5 years old, to decide which consequence you guys want to face. So before I give these lectures, a lot of times I show a video. A video shows some of me running and me playing basketball. And, one of the parts of the video that's very difficult is me, after making some poor choices, right? I'm on this video and I'm crying, right? I'm crying because I know that I made some poor choices and I'm going to have to face the tough consequences, right? And it's tough because I know that when I made that poor choice, and then I'm having to face the consequence, I know that I let a lot of people down. Do you guys ever feel that way? Right? When you make a poor choice, right? Do you guys sometimes feel guilty or upset that you let your mom down, or you let your teacher down, or you let your friend down? Right? You guys ever heard of this term bullying? Right? Can anybody tell me what that is? Yes, right here. Yes, you. Yeah, that's a good one. Hurting somebody, right? Trying to boss somebody around, right? Well, what are the consequences to bullying somebody? Yes.
That you can get in big trouble, and then you can get grounded.
Yeah, you can get in big trouble, you can get grounded. Well, I'll tell you a couple more consequences to bullying, right? The first consequence to bullying is that it makes the person who's being bullied feel really poor, right? Really bad, right? Another consequence is that the people who are bullying him, they think they can bully anybody, right? And if you don't do something, guess what they're probably going to do at some point? They're going to probably try and bully you. So do you guys know a couple of things that you can do to help in that certain situation? If you see somebody bullying somebody else? Right there. Yep.
You could tell a teacher.
Yeah, you could tell a teacher, right? Or you can politely tell the people who are bullying, that's not cool. Picked on somebody your own size, right?
That's what I think.
Yeah, that's great. And you don't have to do it mean, right? You don't have to point fingers. You certainly don't have to put a hand on anybody. But you can let those bullies know that that's not going to happen around your friends, right? That you're going to protect your friends, right? So today I'm going to teach you guys only three important lessons to make sure you guys can that you don't have to face negative or bad consequences in your life because of your bad choices. Only three. And at the end, I'm going to ask you guys to tell me those three. Can we do that? Yes. Okay. So how many lessons today am I going to teach you? 3. Am I going to teach you 5? No. Am I going to teach you 1? No. How many? 3. Okay. So when I was competing in sports and during important times in my own life, as I told you, I made choices that caused me to lose a lot, more than I could have ever dreamed of. I wish that I would have just taken a break, right, before making some of those bad choices. Does everyone know what it means to take a break? Anybody know to take a break? Yes. What does it mean to take a break?
It means that you stop doing what you're doing and then you go back to it for a little while.
That's perfect. It means that you stop doing what you're doing and you go back to it for a little. That is perfect. So after a long day of school, when you guys get home, sometimes your parents might just say, hey, take a break. It means relax for a little while, but then you have possibly some work to do. It could be homework, it could be chores, whatever. Or it could also mean take a moment to step away from the busy day and just really chill out. Well, the same is true when you're about to make a poor choice, okay? The same is true when you're about to do the wrong thing. If you learn to take a break, okay? Take a break right before you're about to make that wrong choice or make a poor decision, if you learn to take a break, take a step back, and think about what could happen if you make the poor choice, right? And then you make your decision. That will help you to make a good decision in your life. Here's an example. Okay, you guys are on the playground, and there are these super shiny mound of rocks just sitting there calling your name, okay? And you know that it's strictly against the rules to pick them up and throw them, right? Because we don't throw rocks, correct? Right. So what should you do? The first thing you should do is take a break and think what the possible consequences are if you throw the rocks and possibly hit someone. What would be the consequence if you pick up those rocks and throw someone? The young lady at the very top there. Yes, stand up. What are the consequences if you pick up a rock and you throw it? Right? Or give me another one. This one's very obvious. What could happen if you pick up a rock and you throw at somebody? Yes, right here.
Someone could get hurt.
Perfect. Someone could get hurt, right? But you control that. Before you pick up the rock, take a break, and think about the consequences of you throwing that rock, right? It will overshadow the fun of picking up the rock, right? Because is it fun to see our friends get hurt? Is it fun to take a trip to the principal's office? Right? Most of the time it's not, sorry. Right? You don't want to go there. Is it fun when your parents get the note home from your teacher? That's not fun. I know when my kids come home occasionally and they've made a poor choice, it's not fun for them at all. You see, I did not take a break before I made poor choices, and it caused me to hurt a lot of people. Not physically hurt them, but it hurt their feelings because I made poor choices, right? It hurt my family and my friends, my teammates. You see, no matter who you are in your life, right, your choices have consequences. I learned this hard, important life lesson the hard way, and although telling some of my stories sometimes is hard, it's why I do it. But before I go any further, I want to tell you a little bit about my background so you can understand me a little bit better. As I mentioned, I was raised in Los Angeles, California, and I found sports and I love them. But I also realized that it's important early on to learn how to take a break, right? So we've talked about the first lesson, right? Take a break and think about the consequences. So the second lesson that I'm going to share with you all today is this whole idea, you've got to be very careful whom you hang out with and who you choose as your friends, all right? So unfortunately for me, there was about 5 or 7 years right after my time at the University of North Carolina, and I made the choice to hang out with people who were making some bad choices in their life. Do you guys have any friends that are constantly getting into trouble? Yeah. Right? You have some friends, right? I'm sure you do. I chose not to take a break to think how the consequences of following my friends would affect me. So now I see more and more the importance of hanging out with good people. So here's the lesson for you guys, right? It's a whole lot easier to make good choices in your life if you hang out with people who are making good choices, right? So if you find yourself hanging out with people who are always getting into trouble, here's a little bit of advice. Don't hang out with them, because you're going to probably make some poor choices because you're hanging out with them. So pick your friends wisely, all right? Hang out with people who are making good choices in their own life, and you'll probably make good choices as well, right? So if you want to avoid trouble and make the best choices for your life, take a break and closely watch who you're hanging out with. So this brings me to my third lesson. There's a famous saying, and I'm not sure if this group might be a little young to have heard this, but probably some of you have. There's a famous saying that says, if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything. And it's very true. This means that it's so important for you to do the right thing, because if you don't boldly do the right thing, for example, if you see somebody getting bullied, if you don't step up and do the right thing, do it boldly, do it strong, right? Then you're going to be tricked and you're going to be fooled very easily. An example of standing up for something is one that I'm sure you've all heard of before. And we talked about the bullying. There's a little boy in the class, and he's constantly being picked on, and he's bullied. And let's say that you see the bullying every single day, right? And it kind of bothers you, right? It bothers you because, one, you know it's not right, and two, it hurts the little boy. What are the possible consequences to not doing the right thing? We talked about that, right? The little boy will be upset. He could get hurt, right? He could be forever hurt by the bullying. So for different reasons, I chose to ignore these things called red flags in different relationships in my life. And I did not take a break to stand up strong against what I knew wasn't right. So right now, most, if not all of you, are going to be facing some tough situations in your life, even at this young age, right? And the sooner you all learn to take a break, to stand up for what's right, the better off you guys will all be when trouble comes your way. Here are a couple examples. You go with some friends to the mall, and while you're in the store, one of your friends, right, decide that it would be such a great idea to take something without paying, right? They tell you, oh, it's going to be so easy for you if you just come along and you do it with us, right? What do? Right? Chances are, if you don't take a break, if you don't stand up for what's right, then you're going to get caught up and you're going to get in trouble for things that they're doing, right? So there's a couple things involved in that. One, you got to be careful whom you hang out with. You got to be careful because if your friends are doing things that they know they shouldn't have and you're around them, guess who's going to get in trouble too? Yeah, you know? So the third lesson I want to share with you today is to take a break to get good advice from people. Does everybody know what advice is? Yeah, advice is when somebody tells you what to do. Taking a break to get proper advice can help you make good decisions. Sometimes you need to stop and reach out to people who will give you good advice, right? Now, I'm not talking about your friend sitting next to you who's nudging you right now and getting you in trouble. I'm not talking about those friends to give you good, sound advice. I'm talking about people who you know care for you. I'm talking about your teachers, your parents, your mentors, your coaches, right? If you have a question and you're not sure if what you're doing is the right thing, just ask somebody. Just ask somebody, and they'll give it to you straight, right? Some of you might have noticed that I mentioned the word get proper advice, right? Because not everybody's advice is good, right? If your friends are getting in trouble and you ask them for advice, they're probably going to give you not so good advice, right? Right? Reach out to people who will give you sound advice to make the best decision. So, there were 3 things that I shared with you guys today, right? There were 3 lessons, right? What was the first one? Can somebody tell me what was the first lesson that I shared with you? Young lady right here. Yes. Say it a little bit louder.
Take a break and consider the consequences.
Perfect. The first one was take a break and think about the consequences of your choices. Perfect. Does anybody remember the second lesson that I shared today? Yes, young man. Yep. What was the second lesson? Right. The second lesson, that's great, was take a break, right, and be very careful whom your friends are and whom you hang out with. And the third lesson today? Yes, young lady?
Go to someone for proper advice.
Perfect. Take a break and get proper advice. And once you've done those 3 things, right, I'm absolutely positive that you guys are going to make the right choices for your life, and you won't have to face negative or bad consequences to your poor choices. Have a great day, and thank you very much.